Hello and welcome to Sansad TV. You're watching Viewpoint with me, Rausan Pereira. Well, in a development hailed as historic within the telecom sector, BSNL, the state-run telecom provider, long beleaguered by mounting losses and dwindling relevance, has posted back-to-back quarterly profits. As of financial year 2024-25, BSNL recorded a net profit of 280 crore rupees in the fourth quarter, following a 262 crore rupees profit in the third quarter. The combined 542 crore rupees profit marks a significant reversal in fortunes, especially considering the telecom PSU had reported a staggering loss of 850 crore rupees in the same quarter last year. For a company once seen as a relic of the pre-digital era, BSNL's resurgence reflects not just fiscal recovery, but a structural transformation. In this edition of Viewpoint, we will analyze the reasons for BSNL's revival and what impact it will have on the telecom sector. Joining me on the program today are Manish Sinha, Member, Finance, Digital Communications Commission, and Akhil Ahuja, Finance and Restructuring Expert and Founder, Mavint Reconstructing. All right, thank you to my guests for joining me on this edition of Viewpoint. Mr. Sinha, let me start the program with you first. Let's first try and understand and analyze, this revival really as far as BSNL is concerned. What has prompted it? What are the reasons why BSNL has seen this revival?
There's a bit of history attached to what really happened to BSNL. BSNL was one of the prime players in the early decade of this century. Somewhere on the introduction of the 3G, it lost its way for various reasons, some of them related to payments, etc., for spectrum. Then in 2016 came this hyper competition with the introduction of 4G. And that's where BSNL lost out because, telecom generational change involved a lot of capex, and it could not make capital investments in its network, could not grow to diversify in products, so could not take steps for the growth of revenue as it was happening for other operators who were competing in the same market. That's why much later in 2019, this government took certain significant steps. One was to rationalize the number of employees in the BSNL. So there was a significant reduction with the VRS scheme. They came down to numbers that were more realistic compared to their peers in the telecom sector. Then a much larger revival plan was made in 2022, where under which the government has made investments in terms of equity and even given away cash through the budgetary grant of more than 2 lakh crore to bring it at par with the other operators, so that BSNL as a strategic player, public sector player in the market, can survive and become profitable once again.
Absolutely. All right, let me bring in Akhil Ahuja now. He's founder of Mavint Restructuring. As far as restructuring BSNL is concerned, what kind of restructuring do you think that BSNL requires, has seen, and what more do we need to see in the days to come?
So, if you see, in the last 4 to 5 years, a lot of capex is being made by the BSNL. And this is a highly capex industry which require an investment either at the tower level or the equipment level or the acquisition of spectrum also. Government has infused a lot of money. That is the one reason that the last 2 consecutive quarters has seen a positive earnings. As sir has rightly mentioned that there was some voluntary retirements for the employees also. And going forward, there are more such activities are required. First, definitely the cost realizations. The employee cost for the BSNL is around 40% of their revenue. And if you just compare it with their peers, this is hardly 5 to 10%. That is where one major focus needs to be there for the cost rationalization. Another thing, right now the BSNL has launched 4G spectrum. There are more than 1 lakh sites that has been deputed. They have a plan to launch 5G also. But the market is way ahead to the BSNL. The competitors, the other operators are working on the 6G technologies. Recently, there were licenses or the spectrum being issued for the satellite network also. And much more valued added services are given by the operators. So, for the BSNL, in terms of the structuring, more enhanced products needs to be launched. Yes, BSNL has a penetration into the rural area, which still have a very low tele density, which is around 60%. What does that mean? In the rural area, only the 6% out of the 10 are using the telecom services. Whereas on the India PAN level, it is more than 100%, 130% in the urban areas. That's what the BSNL needs to capitalize, considering their footprints already into the rural area. And in terms of the structuring, the BSNL has a very heavy balance sheets in terms of the real estate assets. I strongly believe that it's a high time for a demerge at least few of the critical component into a separate entities for a separate monitoring. It could be a tower business, tower maintenance, it could be network, or specifically the real estate monetization should be done in a separate entity.
Okay, points very well taken. Let me take the points forward with Mrs. Sinha now. Diversification, enhanced services, and making full use of the rural connect that BSNL has. That is the best way forward, is what 𝐁𝐒𝐍𝐋 𝐬 is suggesting. And do you think that that is something that is sustainable? It can be done, it can be scaled up.
So, this government plan I was talking about, a large part of it is capex, and it brings with it capex into indigenized 4G stack that is developed within India. So BSNL is doing several things. It's a typical public sector company which has responsibilities to develop technology as well as indigenous technology, and also run a profitable business. So this 𝐻𝐒 Sahab was talking about 1 lakh crore, 1 lakh
4G sites.
Towers, 4G sites. That is a very capex driven activity. And for that, government has provided grants to BSNL to assist them into building this network. We have also given them almost all kinds of spectrum with equity, in exchange for equity. So it is, though it's creating a load on the balance sheet, but it doesn't create an immediate load on cash flows of BSNL. So that's the saving grace, unlike what happened in 2010 when they were made to pay for all the spectrum. Now it's coming as government equity. So they have the entire range of bands, starting from sub-gigahertz to mid bands and what is required for 4G, and they'll probably get a reservation even what is there for 5G. So this network that they are building, almost 85,000 of them are active towers now, and within maybe another 3-4 months we may have the entire network ready for launch of 4G at all the places all over the country. BSNL of course has this special presence in the rural and remote areas, but then one should also remember that they are not commercially viable. So that viability gap funding needs to keep, as a support, needs to keep coming. So the last revival plan is actually up to 26-27. It's a very happy situation that they've become EBITDA positive in 25-26. It's 24-25 itself. This entire year and the year next year, they have opportunities to take this forward. Specialized products are absolutely necessary for revenue growth. I mean, that's where what 𝐻𝐒 Sahab was saying, that other operators have built in competition on those specialized products. So those areas need to be developed, but the first act is to get the 4G network ready and working with good quality of service.
Absolutely. I think quality of service is going to be of utmost importance, because that's what the people are looking for at the end of the day. 𝐁𝐒 𝐬, let me bring you to the picture once again. Just building on the points that Manish Sinha just made, about is this sustainable? how do we see BSNL scaling up? What more needs to be done? Do we need a little more impetus to be given to BSNL from the government?
So, see, there are two perspectives to this. The first one, if you see whether this can be sustainable, the average revenue per user for the country as a whole is around 200 rupees. Whereas for BSNL is only a 90 to 100 rupees. The reason is simple. Yes, BSNL is at those places in the country where private operator doesn't reach. Either you into the hilly areas, in the border regions, in the tribal areas, you will get the connectivity for the BSNL. But that average revenue per user has to be increased for a long-term sustainability. See, government has already done a lot, and they are definitely going to do done for a short period of a time, but for a longer period of a time, the model has to be self-sustainable. The reason being, see, from the market perspective, it's a very nearby duopoly market where there is a one Bharti Airtel, there is one Reliance Jio, and Vodafone and Idea. And Vodafone Idea has its own inherent limitation in terms of reaching out to the market. In all these schemes, BSNL has a 8% of the market share, and that market share definitely will be increased, will be with the more subscriber and increasing the average revenue per users. So these are the two factors that would be very critical for a long-term sustainability.
Absolutely. All right. Mrs. Sinha? Long-term sustainability, that is one. And the second part of the question, I'd like to take it up as well, because you touched upon it in your previous remark as well, the importance of BSNL as a whole for the people of this country and for the nation.
So BSNL, of course, it has a kind of, it's a strategic, secure network, for the country. So it has its own importance in the functioning of the government itself. The networks are used at very critical places, and for disaster recovery, or in the defense networks, or any such network which requires security. So it's very significant for those areas, and that is why BSNL needs to be sustained so far as its existence as a telecom operator is concerned. BSNL also was one of the pioneers of low tariff regime in the country. When it introduced mobile, it introduced affordable mobile in the country, and it continues to be one of the significant players which ensure that there is affordability in this competition that's there. So duopolies have their own risks, and BSNL keeps as one of the alternate operators which provides affordable service. So these are two very significant things. The third thing is that the government has made a direct pitch for indigenization of telecom technology. So as you are aware, there are about 4 or 5 significant telecom manufacturers all over the country. BSNL has become a tool to introduce Indian manufacturing, and they are using the indigenized 4G stack, partly developed by CDOT and now being implemented by TCS. The entire network is also very easily upgradable to 5G. So as soon as the 4G is over, BSNL will shift to upgrading this to the 5G. So that single capex combined to take care of 2 generations of technology, that's a very unique thing that BSNL is attempting by this investments, which has also been held by the government. But BSNL, as Ahuja Sahab mentioned, has a significant real estate almost all over the country, as many as 15,000 properties.
Right.
So that monetization is going on, and there is a lot of movement within the government to ease that process and to enable that monetization. So BSNL, if it is able to do so successfully, it will have an additional stream for assisting its capex in the future. So there will be these earnings plus the revenues that the monies that come from the monetization. Both together are expected to drive the future capex of BSNL. And when it is in a position to make investments as the other operators have done, and Ojasa was pointing that out, then perhaps they'll become a competitive player in the market. It's just a mention I would like to make is that BSNL does have a committed
user base.
Base. And a lot of people prefer to use BSNL. Of course, if you go to remote and hilly areas and areas where access is not there, BSNL sometimes ends up being the only operator that is present there. So that is a significant advantage they have. They are not as revenue yielding as he says, and there's a big gap, I agree, in the ARPU. And I hope in these coming years that will be one area of improvement that will lead to significant growth in revenue market. So they can become a bigger, they can have a bigger share of revenue in the same market.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, taking the discussion forward now, and since we brought in other players and other operators as well, Akhil Ahuja, let's look at the telecom sector as a whole, the profitability of BSNL. What does it mean for the telecom sector as a whole? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it work in progress? Where do you see this headed?
So see, telecom sector has definitely very booming demand into the future, considering the trajectory of the country where we are standing as of today, considering the digital boom that has been incorporated into the economy, the digital payments, and you can relate it, everything are moving to the digital these days. Profitability definitely is required. The market share, the market leader is currently the Jio, the Reliance Telecom, which holds around 40% of the market share. The BSNL used to be a monopoly business 20 years back. It ended up into a significant losses, which gives the private player to enter into the market. Bharti Airtel is the one who has started after the BSNL. The Jio came later on and have a significant market share. The more profitability that comes to the BSNL is definitely a pie that is coming from the private players. And see, the private players has one concern also, considering the BSNL, that is that it is the same government who is the regulator on the one side, from a department of telecommunication or the TRAI, and similarly their competitor also on the other side having an ownership in the operator, which they feel it is not a level playing field for them to reach out to the market. But to responding to that, they have not that legacy which the BSNL is facing on currently. They already are much ahead to their peers. They are much ahead to the BSNL in terms of the market share, in terms of the profitability, and in terms of the cash flows. Yes, in the times to come, we can see much more consolidation happening in the market, which I believe is not good for the economy. At least we need 5 to 7 good operators having a good revenue share allocations among them. And specifically coming to the Vodafone and Idea, as of today, the government of India holds more than 49% equity in the Vodafone and Idea. And that's primarily the conversion of AGR dues into the equity. Even our telecom minister has recently mentioned any further conversion of the dues into the equity ended up making Vodafone and Idea a PSU organization. So considering all this, there will be expectation of the consolidation. The future of the Vodafone and Idea is still questionable, and that can be clarified in the times to come. But yes, any benefit to the BSNL is the pie that this player is going to share it with the BSNL.
Okay, points very well taken. Mr. Sinha, as far as challenges are concerned, broadening the scope of the discussion, let's bring in this aspect as well. What big challenges do you see for BSNL going forward? What are the stumbling blocks and how do we overcome them?
So, the biggest challenge is to get the capex for making investments in the coming years. And profitability is one of the things that contributes to that. The other is that they are trying indigenous technology. So it's almost, the network is almost coming to readiness. We talked about quality of service and more products coming in and more vigorous activity within the network so that it gets monetized. So monetization of currently 4G, and then subsequently monetization of the 5G which is an industry problem actually. All the private operators also keep complaining that not sufficient monetization of the 5G network has happened. But these challenges, the plans are there to overcome these challenges. So there is the plan to get more products in, by way of enterprise business, by way of bringing cloud operations and edge-based technologies, which can lead to more vigorous uses of the network data, the way the data network is there. Much of it will depend once the network is ready and how it performs, what kind of quality of service it gives, and those are the things that BSNL is actually busy doing just now in these days as we speak, and these are the things that are being monitored even at the ministry level to ensure that this entire revival becomes a successful plan and leads to BSNL becoming a effective competitor in the telecom market.
Okay. 𝐁𝐒𝐍𝐋, let me bring you to the picture once again. Let's look at this aspect of, what needs to be done really from a financial perspective in the immediate near future. A quick kind of a solution or anything that needs to be done immediately, and what needs to be the long-term plan.
Right. As I mentioned earlier, it's a right time to have a much more cost rationalization in terms of the employee cost, which constitute a significant burden on the BSNL, and to have added the value-added services which can grow to the revenue lines. So these are the two short-term requirements that should be there in the times to come.
And in terms of long-term measures?
And in terms of long-term measurement, as I mentioned earlier, there should be a leaner subsidiaries for the different activities like the monetization of the real estate, or in terms of the separate company for the tower business. The private players are having a separate companies in tower business, not having within the main operator business. That would help the leaning the balance sheet of the BSNL and would end up showing a more profitability into the balance sheets.
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head as to what needs to be done in the short term and what needs to be in the long term. It's time to get closing comments now from both the panelists on where do we go from here, what's the best way forward, and what next, starting first with you, Mr. Sinha.
So I'd just like to make that comment that if you look at the balance sheet, BSNL has a much better debt position than it had 3 years ago. And perhaps if from this platform it takes off, it will be able to generate money from the market also. The debt situation is much better now, largely because of government support. Some of it they have done on their own, but financially they are in a place from where they can launch themselves into additional activities. The other thing is that scaling up the network itself. So they are focusing on scaling up, and they were left behind. Now they want to, in this year or towards the mid of next year, become a 5G operator. That will give them parity with their peers in the market and establish a much more effective and better competition. So that time we'll be able to see really how much BSNL is able to compete, and that scalability is one way in which the continuity of the corporation itself can be sustained. The third thing is the success of the monetization program, monetizing, because the employee strength has really come down. So there's a lot of real estate which is free, and they should be able to use it and monetize it and use it for capex in the network, in developing products, doing research and development to get new technology, new indigenous technology into their network, and the access network, and then there is the backhaul spectrum network. Both of these have become very significant now because there are huge traffic of data flowing on these networks. So both sides need enough investments, and BSNL is planning to have significant ILL growth as well as the access side. time will tell whether they are successful in getting more subscribers. ARPU, if the quality of service improves, then matching the industry ARPUs may not be so difficult. But getting new subscribers is the real challenge, and that's where they should concentrate in the coming months.
Absolutely. All right, and Akhil Ahuja, please close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
Sure. So, having the profits in 2 consecutive quarters, I just see this as a temporary revival and for a long-term sustainable revival. And to see the BSNL as one of the critical telecom operator in the country, apart from what that has already been said, I would like to add one another thing, that the BSNL needs to enhance their consumer experience behavior. That would add much more value to the organization, apart from others, the operational and the financial metrics that we've already spoken about.
Absolutely. All right. We'll have to leave it at that, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me on the program, sharing your views and putting things into perspective for us. Well, what's coming out of this discussion is that BSNL really needs to focus on CapEx is one aspect, cost rationalization, value-added service is another as well, really, that needs to be focused on in the near future. As far as long-term is concerned, real estate monetization, as well as additional activities and gaining or harnessing new subscribers must be on top of the agenda as far as BSNL is concerned, if it wants to continue this revival and ensure that it stands on its own 2 feet. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Viewpoint. See you again next time.
To watch more programs of Sansad TV, subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to like and share them.